would still have their children if these trans bills in Tennessee were never a thing.
Because these are children being sold into sex slavery, and you don't even know what they are.
What is an assault weapon?
It is, for example, an AK-47.
So we are going to have the gun conversation again, inspired by a George Orwell quote that I saw yesterday. Also, Ted Cruz yells at Mayorkas over the wristbands at the border. Joe Biden doesn't think Christians are being targeted, and also Hawk Self, a new gender identity that is sweeping the nation. All that coming up in this episode of Daily Caller Live. My name is Jobob. Daily Caller Live starts right now.
2, 1.
Here we go!
Might be the only brown guy on earth named Jobob.
That is actually their name, Jobob.
Live from the dingy bunker, completely cut off from the outside world, except for you fine folks. My name is Jobob. This is Daily Caller Live. Thanks so much for tuning in on today. It is Wednesday, March 29th, the year of our Lord 2023. How you doing? Yesterday talked a lot about how we're probably not going to dig super into the Nashville shooter thing. But I read a quote yesterday that I thought was fascinating and kind of moved my position on rehashing all of these same discussions that we've had over and over and over and over and over again. George Orwell, you familiar with that guy? He is, author, time traveler, possibly, very, very good at predicting the future. Let me read you this quote, and then we'll go into this whole gun debate stuff, and we'll just go over the surfacey level stuff. But I thought this was just fascinating. We've now sunk to a depth at which restatement of the obvious is the first duty of intelligent men. I'm not entirely sure I qualify as intelligent men, but for now we'll say that. If liberty means anything at all, it means the right to tell people what they do not want to hear. In times of universal deceit, telling the truth will be a revolutionary act. Stating the obvious is the first duty of an intelligent man. Again, I'm not entirely sure I fit into the mold of intelligent man, but restating the obvious is apparently something that we need to do, and we need to do constantly. I struggle with this a lot in terms of, like, how much do we rehash the same stupid freaking arguments? And the answer is apparently we have to do it over and over and over and over and over again. Actually, I'm going to start with this clip before we get into the worst possible take of the Nashville shooter. This is Senator John Kennedy from Louisiana asking Mayorkas, the Homeland Security Secretary, if he thinks assault weapons should be banned. I want you to play this exchange. Again, having been in this political talking space for about 2 years now, it is interesting having to reiterate and repeat and restate these arguments. But apparently it's necessary, and apparently even the senators think it's necessary. I want you to watch this exchange, and we will discuss on the other side. Check this out.
Mr. Secretary, do you agree with the president that we should ban the private ownership of assault weapons in America?
Senator, I do.
What is an assault weapon?
It is, for example, an AK-47.
Can you give me a definition other than just pointing to a specific weapon? Would there be other weapons besides an AK-47 you would ban?
There very well are. And I remember when I was a federal prosecutor in the Central District of California from September 25th, 1989 to, I believe it was April 2001.
And I thank you for your service, but if you could answer my question.
The vast majority of law enforcement officers, leaders with whom I worked were greatly in support of the assault weapons ban.
Mr. Chairman, you know why we get so frustrated with you? Because you won't give straight answers.
I think I just did.
No, you didn't. No, you didn't. Do you have a definition of an assault weapon?
I am confident there is a technical definition of what is an assault weapon, and it was assuredly used in the context of the statute that previously existed banning assault weapons.
Okay, so that is that. Again, I'm reiterating having to reiterate these sorts of arguments, but let's just go with this. If you want to ban guns, you can't do that. That's a constitutional amendment. Firearms are protected under the Second Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. Maybe you've heard of it. Possibly look it up if you're interested. So outside of a blanket ban on guns, you then need to, if you're going to ban a particular type of gun, you would need to define what that is. People often say, well, assault weapons or weapons of war. Okay, but let's get down to the granular level. What you're effectively saying is that because you can't ban guns as a whole, you are then effectively banning a type of machine. And if you're banning a type of machine, you have to have a very strict and specific definition of what that machine is. Not of what it does, because a bunch of different types of machines can do the same thing. Now, you have to get on the granular level of what that machine specifically is. And if that's the case, then anybody trying to get around the ban of this machine can make slight alterations to get around the specific definitions of that machine, and therefore make the ban that you've instituted on this particular specific machine entirely ineffective. That goes without saying. That's just an argument that exists. Now, I think there's a lot of people now, especially on the lefty side of the aisle, that are pro getting rid of the Second Amendment, obviously, which I'm not for. But if that is the argument being made on their side, make that argument. Because the problem is when you make bad arguments of, well, we need to ban assault weapons. Like, okay, what is that? Is the constant and ever-present argument that we will always fall back on is that if you're going to ban a specific type of machine, you have to define what that machine is. In other words, all you're doing is arguing against a case that doesn't really exist. So if you want to, look, again, this is, I don't know if this is advice or what, I don't know what this is, but this is a thought that has come to my head often, is look, if you guys want to try to get rid of the Second Amendment, do that. I think it will face huge political backlash. But hiding behind these dumb arguments and these political slogans about banning things that can't be defined by the average person and the federal government, to say the least, doesn't really do anything. We're not helping here. That being said, going further into this whole, the particulars of the gun debate, we also face several instances where the bans being proposed in the aftermath of a terrible shooting tragedy are not pieces of legislation that would have stopped that tragedy to begin with. To restate things again, remember in Monterey Park, California, the Chinese New Year celebration, where a guy went and shot that up horribly. He used a weapon that was already illegal, and the illegality of having that weapon didn't stop him from getting that weapon. In Half Moon Bay, where there was the hotel shooting a couple weeks after that, there was a law. So, okay, well, we should restrict handguns for or restrict all guns for anyone under the age of 21. Okay, that wouldn't have helped that situation. So not only is there a difficulty in defining what it is that they want to ban, they also institute a lot of legislative suggestions that wouldn't have helped the particular situation that we're looking at. Now, one of my biggest issues and biggest gripes with the conversation around the horrible school shooting in Nashville is the rhetoric around reality. We talk about reality often on this show, and if you've seen me live on tour, you will know that I do a very funny bit about reality in which We applaud one of the most obvious statements known to mankind since the dawn of time. But I hear a lot, Gavin Newsom specifically, governor of California, said, "We can't keep denying reality. It's the guns." I therefore responded saying, well, man says to stop denying reality as he denies reality. The reality is, and Michael Knowles, if you're a fan of him, pointed this out on his show yesterday at length, guns, in terms of the functionality and, I hate to use the word effectiveness, but the ability of guns have not really changed in the last 100 years. Yes, there have been modifications that have made them easier to use or look cooler, but in the grand scheme of things, guns themselves have not changed in the last 100 years, yet mass shootings of this nature are relatively new in respect to the longevity of Americans owning guns. So to say that it is specifically guns and say that that's the reality, Gavin, would then deny the reality that, well, nothing about what you say is the sole factor has changed. Therefore, maybe, and when I say maybe, I mean there absolutely is. I'm being a little bit sarcastic here. Maybe it's possible that there are other factors outside of the century-long stagnant factor that play into the mentality of the people that cause these unfortunate and horrible events. I was listening to a talk show yesterday talking about nihilism and the fact that increasing amounts of people care about nothing, which, you know, if you don't care about anything and nothing is worth fighting for and nothing is worth striving for, yeah, it's more likely that you would resort to a terrible, heinous act like we saw in Nashville. But to blame that solely and entirely on the machine used to carry out the heinous act completely ignores, like I said, the 100 years in which that machine has not really evolved in tactical effectiveness. And to ignore the cultural and societal change that has happened around the stagnant century of guns is to ignore reality. So when people say, well, we have to stop ignoring the reality that guns are the problems, what they're doing effectively is ignoring the reality of the societal and cultural norms that have changed drastically in the last 2 or 3 decades, and say that, well, no, the fact that we're calling men women and women men, or vice versa, or people can identify as dogs or hawks or various animals if they so choose, the fact that we're pumping people full of mind-altering medications to help with their gender identity, and I'm just sticking in the gender wheel. I'm not even talking about the fall in church attendance and many of the other variables out there. But if we're going to say that it's just the guns, we're ignoring the crazy cultural shift that has taken place over the last 20 to 30 years, which, in my opinion, is denying reality. I feel like the biggest commentary I have here is that the adults have left the conversation. Where are the adults when you need them to talk about reality and how it has changed the course of our culture and our society, and how can we get back on track? That, to me, should be at the center of the conversation when talking about these horrible tragedies. And if you're denying any of that, you're simply denying reality. I want to move on to the worst take. Again, wasn't really planning on going on that rant yesterday, but like I said, the Orwell quote of the first duty of intelligent men is to restate the obvious. I guess we have to. But this is probably the worst take that has come out of the Nashville shooting. This is not the only instance of this. This is just one occurrence in which somebody vocalized, like I said, the worst possible take on this horrible event. We'll play it for you, and then we will discuss on the other side how damaging rhetoric like this is, and it should be hit by all sides of the political spectrum. Watch this. We'll discuss on the other side.
I wonder if the parents of the victims of the Nashville shooting today would still have their children if these trans bills in Tennessee were never a thing. I'm not a parent, but if I were, I'd be real, real mad at the government. I'd be real, real mad at the government.
Okay, so this person with the worst possible take on the Nashville shooting, effectively blaming, and you can decide for yourself what she's saying, but effectively blaming the Nashville laws on the actions or for the actions of an insane, crazy person. So let me read some other stuff going on here. First things first, to state the obvious is, wow. So are we then justifying somebody who's angry at some laws rather than using their voice as a voting American citizen to be able to enact the laws that they want, which is fine. I'm all for that. Even if I disagree with you, I support your ability to try and effectively enact laws that you support and you agree with. Even if I disagree, I am for your ability to do that. But what you're saying is effectively the murder of children at a school is justified because somebody didn't like the rules of the geographic location in which they live. That seems crazy. What seems even more crazy here is this. This is an NBC reporter, a guy by the name of Benjamin Ryan, who I, honest to God, feel like probably should no longer be in the position that he's in, probably should be relieved of his duties. He tweeted this in the immediate aftermath of the shooting. NBC has ID'd the Nashville shooter as blank blank, I'm not going to say them's name, 28, who identifies as transgender and has no previous criminal record. He also adds this: Nashville is home to the Daily Wire, a hub of anti-trans activity by Matt Walsh, Ben Shapiro, and Michael Knowles. So effectively saying that, well, because this area is the home to people who espouse ideas and affect change in their community, because this is the home of them, I'm going to add that into the story to do what now? Again, to justify the shooting and murdering of children? That seems pretty not okay. Matt Walsh responded to that, saying, NBC reporter Benjamin Ryan responds to shooting by trans extremists by pointing out the Daily Wire is also in Nashville. The media is now openly sending violent psychopaths after us, which seems to be hard to argue with. The bottom line here is this: there's no justifying what insane, crazy people do, especially by way of they don't agree with the law in that area. If you don't agree with a law, you can voice your opinion, you can vote to change that law, you can organize, you can do a lot of different things to change the law in the locality or the state or the country in which you live. You are allowed to do that. You're never allowed to go on a murderous rampage and kill children. That's not okay ever. And it's crazy that I feel like I have to say that. But according to more people than I'm comfortable with, there is some wiggle room here justifying the actions of an insane person by saying, well, they didn't agree with the law. Maybe if they didn't change the laws, this person wouldn't have committed this heinous act. Which, again, if you have that opinion, holy cow, you are more wrong than the most wrong person I know. I want to move on to this too. This is again more regarding this Nashville shooting. We'll get to this Joe Biden clip in a second, but I thought this was interesting. Robbie Starbuck tweeted this, and he makes a point that a lot of people are making, especially in the argument of, okay, well, what do you do? Okay, so let's go back really quick. What do you do, right? What do you do? We talked yesterday about some solutions. I said that I've been more on. I don't want schools to look like they're densely secure areas. In terms of, I don't want kids to feel that way, like they need to be protected, but at the same time, they do need to be protected. That's the whole argument we're trying to run here. Now, the lefty side of the aisle thinks that children can be protected if we take guns away from law-abiding citizens. And I say that specifically because if we, just hypothetically, if we ban guns, the only people that would turn in their guns are the people that you probably want to have the guns. I can own a military-grade tank and a nuclear weapon, and it would have no effect on the danger of the people around me. Literally none. Maybe not a nuclear weapon. I can own an arsenal of firearms, and I would never go do anything like this. In other words, it would put 0 people in danger. So if you're on the side of saying, well, we need to take away the guns, effectively what you're going to do is you're going to take them away, if you can take them away, from the people who probably would have never done anything like this. It's not like the crazy person that wants to go out and kill people will say, oh, well, dang it, the government wants to take away the gun that I was going to use to commit this heinous act. Well, I guess I can't now, so darn it. Like, if you think that's the outcome of banning any sort of guns, then I don't know what to tell you. But back to the case of, well, what do you do? It would seem that, yeah, protecting the schools with armed security, let's just even say like security, we'll assume that they're armed, would be a great way to do things. There was a post going around yesterday. We protect our presidents with guns. We protect our celebrities with guns, our airports with guns, our music festivals with guns. We protect pretty much dang near everything with guns, and we protect our kids at a school with a sign that says, no guns, welcome here. As much as I honestly don't really like the feeling that would give kids, hopefully it could be done in a way that, kids have no idea. Hopefully they would never know that they've got, several armed security on campus. But that seems like that seems to make the most sense. Now, here's that tweet that Robbie Starbuck tweeted that a bunch of people are echoing. This is from the Nashville police. Some writings. I'm not sure if the grammar is right on this. Yeah, this is so poorly worded. I'm not going to attempt. So the bottom line is that the shooter was looking at other locations. Investigators also found that the shooter may have looked at targeting another location, Drake said, but gave up after the idea of doing a threat assessment because that site particularly had too much security. The location was in Nashville, he said. Robbie tweeted that Nashville police chief says that the killer looked at targeting another site, but settled on that school because the other site had too much security. Visible security can deter school shooters. There's no excuse to not pass funding for armed security at every school. I don't necessarily know if that's a federal issue, but if you've got your congresspeople and your senators all clamoring for more gun control, the least that they can do is pass federal funding. I'd probably make it more of a local issue on a school-to-school basis, probably, because I think some schools would have their kids very, very protected, and there should be their right to do that. But somebody laid out it would cost about $10 billion. We sent about $80 billion to Ukraine. It would cost about $10 billion for Congress to enact funding for protecting kids at schools. So that seems to be like one of the better arguments that I think, and I think the fact that the shooter in this Nashville situation was deterred by the amount of security at another location seems to be like a pretty good argument. Josh Hawley yesterday also said that trans activists are targeting Christians in this particular case. That seems to be the case. Still waiting for a lot more information to come out. But then Joe Biden was asked about that, and here's how he responded. He's not been doing a great job with responding to this sort of stuff, especially over the last couple days. Watch this.
Do you believe that Christians were targeted in Nashville school shooting? Do you believe that Christians were targeted?
I have no idea.
Josh Hawley believes they were. What do you say to that?
Well, I probably don't then.
Probably don't.
No, I'm joking. No, I have no idea.
Dang. Yeah. Read the room. But yeah, the president being asked, hey, Josh Hawley says this is an event targeting Christians. And he said, I have no idea. And then he said, well, Josh Hawley says it. And he says, I probably don't agree then. Instinctually falling back into partisan divides rather than trying to solve a problem is the president of the United States. You know, there's a lot more stuff that I have here. The FDA approved Narcan for over-the-counter, California water crisis going down, Ted Cruz yelling at Mayorkas over migrants. But I'm looking at the time here and realizing that I've effectively rambled on about this situation for longer than needed. Maybe I'll restate this quote at the beginning that I had here because that's the reason why we talked about this for as long as we did today. This is a George Orwell quote, and this is what caused me to talk about the Nashville shooting, even though we've talked about the gun argument and the gun debate time and time and time again. This is from Orwell. We've now sunk to a depth at which restatement of the obvious is the first duty of intelligent men. If liberty means anything, it means that the right to tell people what they don't want to hear. The first part of that, the restatement of the obvious is the first duty of intelligent men, is the reason why we went on this big long tangent again. So unfortunately, probably I don't even want to go there. We'll have to keep restating the gun debates and the gun arguments, and I'm a proponent of more security at the schools. That seems like the only reasonable thing, and to ignore the fact that, well, reality is what it is. It would seem that anybody based in reality would think the same thing, although politicians love to use their campaign slogans to try and enact policy that would probably be severely inefficient and ineffective. Even though all of those things happened, it will unfortunately likely be in a place where we have to restate the gun argument yet again and continue to make calls for, hey, does anybody want to pay attention to the societal and cultural components around these terrible events? I would love to have those conversations. I would love to, as a country, stop bickering about the one constant in the last century, the guns, and start talking about, hey, maybe we have a mental health crisis and a societal decline and a culture in decline, and maybe that's at the forefront of all of these terrible acts. So there's that. We'll get to a lot of that stuff tomorrow. We'll leave it there. That'll do it for us today then. Again, sorry for rambling on for 30 minutes about this, but again, maybe the first duty of intelligent, I use finger quotes for intelligent to describe myself, but maybe the first duty of logical men, will say, is to restate the obvious. Yeah. So there's that. Wow. I didn't even look at any of these comments, so sorry about that. Ryan says, for evil to succeed, all good men must do nothing. Who is that? It's a general who said that. The only thing necessary for evil to succeed is for good men to do nothing. Forget that quote. And then Jody says it's very reasonable to keep schools safe. Yeah, it seems like the case. Wow, there's a lot of comments in here. Maybe I'll go through these later on in the day and see if we can get some up here. But yeah, we'll see you tomorrow, same time, same place. If you haven't already, give me a follow on any of your social media platforms. Just type in JOBOB. You'll be able to find me pretty much anywhere. We're also, if you are watching this show on Facebook, we're going to be doing a bunch more just random stuff. I know I've been saying that, but we did finally figure out the tech spec that is going to make this more easily doable. So yes, we will be doing a lot more live streaming stuff on the Facebook page. So just type in JOBOB, be able to find me on Facebook. And yeah, we'll continue the conversation there. We'll see you tomorrow, same time, same place. God bless America.